Morning. So no, I did not do a video Wednesday or Friday last week. I'm kind of just doing this as I come up with things because I decided I didn't really feel like doing a lot of videos on a topic that I did not feel very strongly about, or at least a desire to do. So I had to think pretty hard on this one, and it came to me earlier. So I've mentioned in a previous video that I had some eye health issues a while back that created a blind spot in my vision that I've had to get used to. So one thing I might not have mentioned was the effect that it had on me later that I didn't really think about. So for a while around that time, I was pretty busy. I was just moved to San Antonio. I was trying to get this job to work out, and then I was unemployed looking for work. I'm trying to remember what it was like, and it was very frustrating, and there was a lot of things going on. But one thing that I remember is I had to get used to what losing that part of my vision was like. And it wasn't a lot. It's not like I lost all of my left vision. It's just part of, I don't know how much everybody knows about eye health, but if you kind of study it a little bit, you know that one eye has this whole field of vision, your other eye has this whole field of vision, and there's this overlapping part that helps you see depth. So it helps to determine how far things away. When you look at something, it doesn't look too deep. You can see that, okay, that's a little bit farther away. And that's because if you've ever done that whole trick where you cover one eye and it's over here, and you cover the other eye and it's over here, and they line up to tell you how far away it is. So that's more or less how it works. It's not 100% accurate, so don't come yelling at me if you found out exactly or you know exactly. But feel free to share it in the comments. But that's how your depth perception works. It is the overlapping vision between both eyes to kind of help determine how far things are away. So when I lost the vision, they told me I wouldn't be losing a lot of vision because where it happens, so again, overlapping vision, my blind spot is kind of about right here. So it's still within the overlapping vision, which means that I'm not missing part of the picture. But what I didn't think about in that moment as I'm freaking out and getting used to this diagnosis was how it would affect me long term. So depth perception is one of them. If you've known me for a while, you know that I'm a very clumsy person, and this isn't a recent development, it's just gotten a little bit worse. But I've always been really clumsy. I remember when I was a waitress, I used to constantly have bruises on my thighs, which were about table level because I would always turn around and hit them. Whether that had to do with growing body, whatever, getting used to, like the whole gangly limbs, you just go flailing around everywhere, or just the fact that I'm really clumsy. But that kind of stuff happens to me a lot, so I'm pretty used to it. But anyway, I've always been clumsy. But I noticed that it got worse after everything had kind of cleared up. Because after they do the injection for about that whole rest of the day, I try not to open it because it feels really sore. So I usually just relax with my eyes closed and I don't worry about it. Well, the next day, just kind of getting used to it, my mom was still there. She's helping me out. And then she left at some point within these 3 days. I don't remember the first time. And, I was just trying to get used to being myself again. And I didn't think anything of it. I really didn't stop to consider what it would mean to have this vision change. And the first thing that I remember happening was that I had lost so much vision in my left eye that when it shrank, I noticed how big it was. So it had covered my center vision. So if you're supposed to look at your finger with one eye, that middle part of that whole circle of vision was gone. And with the first injection, it shrank. But now that I had that back, I could see how big it was. And I freaked out, and I scheduled another appointment and ended up making my mom come back. And we went back in, and he said, actually, it shrank. And he explained everything I just explained to you. So that freaked me out. And then I kind of tried to get used to that. You're missing a lot of your vision. You don't really realize how much you rely on it until it's not there anymore. Like, I have to turn my whole head to check my blind spot, to check my mirror. I can't just glance at it because that tends to fall in that shadow and I can still see it, but I don't see it as clearly as I used to. So if you're driving with me, I can still drive. It's not that big a deal. But I've adjusted. I turn my whole head. I have to look back as far so that I can actually see it. That took some getting used to, because I was just kind of like, it's kind of like if you lose your right hand and you're right-handed. You naturally want to reach to use your right hand, and you realize it's not there anymore, and you have to get used to using your left hand. It's kind of the same thing when you lose anything. So I've lost this vision, and I just started to try to naturally rely on it, and it wasn't there, and I had to adjust. Those things took some time, which is why the topic is relearning things is kind of hard. And that, I thought that would be the hardest part, was like trying to figure out those things, just the things that you do every day. And it really, really wasn't. The hardest part was relearning to do the things that I loved. Because things like driving, I had to drive. I had to drive to the places where I had interviews. I had to drive to the temp jobs that I had. I had to drive to work. I drove home. I drove to visit my sisters. You drive a lot. And so that, I guess, frustration of learning how to do that again without this piece of my vision was pretty quickly over with, because I was frustrated, but I had to get over it. I had to drive. I was in the car. Like, I pushed past it faster, and I relearned to do it sooner because I was doing it a lot. Cut to later, while I'm not doing that first job anymore, I'm kind of in a lull. I remember it being about a month of time that I just had to just exist, trying to apply for as many jobs as possible. And that's when I kind of realized this was a bigger adjustment than I was anticipating. And the reason is because reading got a lot more difficult for me. I thought it was just the way my eyes work is I've got this one that's got bad vision, this one's got astigmatism, which means that the contact that I wear has weights on it to hold it in a very specific position. If it moves, things get a little blurry in my right eye, which I compensated with a long time ago, because that's not new, by using and relying on my left eye more, because this one doesn't have a weight on it. It just is what it is, and if it moves, I still have all the vision. So, having lost this vision in my left eye, I started to try relying on my right eye. My right eye, like I said, gets a little blurry every now and then, so reading got more difficult, and I thought that was it. And then I realized when I read, I don't move my eyes very much. I just kind of like take in the text, and I read really quickly that way. And that's just kind of, it's always been that way. I remember when I was in school, I used to be one of those readers that you hated, because I would just open the book and I'd like breeze through it and then get to the end of my piece and the next person had to take over. Or when I was younger and I was like reading books like those thick Harry Potter books, I would just sit and devour books in hours. And this isn't to say that like I had an easy time reading. I was a very, very picky reader, in that I would read like 2 pages of a book, and if I didn't like it, I'd put it down and never pick it up again. And it's taken me a really long time to really put together the library of books that I have over here that I actually did read. But after this, it got a lot more frustrating to read. And I was trying to pick up books again. And so, mixed with the fact that I was really picky, with the fact that I got really frustrated, I just stopped reading new books. I tried, and I did buy a few new books to try to read because they seemed really interesting. I couldn't quite get into it. And it was part of the whole, I don't fall in love with books as easily as some people who will devour anything. I was really picky, so I had to get past that, and then I had to get past a certain point where I had to be really invested in this book to read it, because it was so frustrating trying to relearn how to read. And it wasn't that I just lost the ability to read. Like, I could still read words, I filled out applications, I did my job, but sitting down and reading a book got a lot harder for me, because I don't have to read. It was I read for enjoyment. And it wasn't as enjoyable anymore, because it was frustrating. And I didn't really think about it much. I just adjusted, and I just ended up throwing books out of my brain. I'm like, well, I guess we're not doing that anymore for fun. And then I tried to do video games, and that stopped for a while because when I play video games, there's the screen, and I focus on the center. Usually if it's like a shooter game, that's where your gun is pointed. If it's like a wand, a spell, that's where your character is. Like, whatever it is, it's usually right in the middle of the screen. And I just took in everything else the way I would when I was reading, and would only flick when there was something that I couldn't identify, like it was a new boss or another character coming in. I played a lot of different games. So, like, I just took in everything. And one of the things that I used to take in was the chat box is right here. And that is really close to where that shadow is. And so I wasn't picking up text as easily. And my cats are fighting. I'm going to slide up. But I wasn't picking up certain indicators, and there's some games where the text right here is like, and new enemy approaching, or it would be like my sisters and I were playing and they say, hey, can you come help me out over here, and I wouldn't see it. And I'm going to have to get mad at these guys. Hey! Quit it. I don't know why she likes that toy, but she does, and I got rid of her. But playing video games, it wasn't as easy as it was, and I had to relearn how to do that, which I would try really hard and then get frustrated, and I wouldn't do it. Because again, like the whole reading for fun, the video games were supposed to be fun, and then they weren't. They were really frustrating, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And so for a while, I just really didn't have any hobbies. I didn't have anything that I liked doing. I didn't have anything that I did to decompress. So that led to its own thing of, I was frustrated all the time. I was angry. I was angsty. I was like on edge so often because I didn't have a decompress thing to do. And I would try to watch TV, but the same thing, it just wasn't as, I guess, interesting. And I had to be either close enough to the screen that the thing was small enough, or I had to be like half paying attention, and it just, doing things was a little different. And I didn't really think about it because I don't notice those kinds of changes in my behavior as easily until my husband pointed it out. So I met him a few months after. So the whole thing happened about October, and we met in December. And he probably pointed it out sometime in the spring by that point. He was like, you're really frustrated all the time. Like, what? And he would, when you get to know somebody and you're dating somebody, you'd ask me the things that I'd like to do for fun. And I didn't really think about all of the changes I'd been going through. And I just answered like I would normally have before. I'd say, oh, I like to read for fun. I have all of these books that I've read, all of these worlds that I've discovered in books that I love. I like to play video games. I've played all of these lists of video games. And kind of slowly, he would ask, like, oh, well, what are you reading right now? I'm not reading right now, actually. I haven't really read any books in a while. Okay, what kind of video games are you playing right now? I don't know, I haven't really played a game in a while. I've just kind of been busy. And it kept going like that until he pointed out, hey, you don't really do anything to decompress. Like, you need to de-stress, you need to relax, you need to be doing other things that kind of reset you, the things that you enjoy. Like, you work because you have to, make a living so you can live your life and do things that you enjoy. So where's that part of it? And I hadn't really thought about it. I just kind of lived. I worked. I didn't think about all of the things that I used to do that I just wasn't doing anymore. And so, because of that, that's right around when I started trying to buy new books, when I was trying to do new things, and I realized that instead of relearning how to read to enjoy it, I just didn't anymore. Instead of relearning how to play video games, I just didn't anymore. And so I kind of really had to think about it, and I've been working on that recently. I've been playing this video game that isn't as intensive. So it's a 2D world. You start here, you move around, you're kind of always the center of the screen, and bad guys can't get to you until they're like right around next to you. There's a few that are long range, but that's not anything too big. I still have to look to the left, check the chats, but I've been looking more and more, and what's great about this one is the text changes colors, and so I kind of see sometimes a flash of color right beneath this shadow, because I play it on a bigger screen, that will let me know, okay, I have to look to read this. And so I've been slowly kind of getting used to playing that again. And the other day I finally went back and played one of the other more intensive, like you have to look at the whole screen games, and I'm getting the hang of it again. I'm enjoying doing video games again. But then there was still the books thing. The books thing is one of those things that I've really loved doing, and it helped me as a person who does communications and speaking to absorb new words, to absorb new concepts, to learn things. So I wanted to reincorporate that, but it was still really hard. I still only got like 2 chapters into books and put them down because it was just too much. I just couldn't get into it without getting frustrated. And that was hard. So I decided to go back and do something that would require less effort than reading a new book, which is reading an old book. So I went back, and there was a series that I had been reading that I got really, really into that made it a lot easier to read when I was originally kind of going through this. And I just loved these books. I tore through these books like crazy. I read the first one, the second one, the third one. I bought the prequel. I have all of the books in the series. But I didn't get the last one until about a year after that, and I was already frustrated with reading at this point. And I never really got to read the ending. So I decided I was going to start reading them again. Now, I can't always start from the beginning because it's a little frustrating for me by that point, because you're like, you know exactly what this character is, you know all of these things that they're going to do, and you know the end of this book, the end of that book. So they're like right at the beginning, and sometimes it's really frustrating. So I said, you know what, let me just catch up on the last book before the 2 books that I need to read. And that was probably a couple of days ago. And I'd like to say that's a good few chapters. I think the last chapter 31 is where I'm at. And I haven't been reading as consistently as I used to. I don't just sit there for 12 hours and just read. But that's probably the farthest I've gotten in a really long time. And I'm looking forward to ending this video so that I can go back and read some more. And I'm learning how to read again with this new thing that I have to learn to do, which is looking all the way to this right and read following letters instead of looking at one point, which is a little harder and a little bit more tiring, but that's apparently how I'm going to read now. And the reason I'm going into so much depth and talking about this is because we go through that a lot in life. Things happen and you have to relearn how to do something. I have to relearn how to do the things that I loved because my vision is different. New parents have to relearn how to be in a relationship with their partner with this new baby. Parents of their second child have to relearn how to be parents again because now they have 2 kids. They still have to take care of the first one, and now they have a newborn, and so they have to figure out how to do that again. And we had to figure out how to be cat parents again when we got a second one. And we have to figure out how to live together and learn to be adults again, except together, when we got married. And you have to relearn how to do so many things. And sometimes it's just easier to not. To either just keep going, oh, I'm just going to keep living like I always have. But that's not my life anymore. I'm not a single person in an apartment with barely any furniture. You know, I'm married and we live in this house and we have a lot more furniture than I did, which also means that we have a lot more mess. And I have to relearn to be an independent person in this new situation. And like I said, parents and all of these situations that pop up, how to relearn to be in a new work environment when you get a new job, or relearn your same job when you get a new position, when you get promoted. You're still a lot of the times in the same environment, you just have a different position. And And so now you have to learn how to do that in the same place that you've been working. And we get really frustrated sometimes about it. And we get really antsy and we don't want to do it. But that's part of life. That's one of the struggles that you'll have to go through. So hopefully some of you related. If you do, feel free to share your stories in the comments of the frustrating things that you had to really learn to do. And I'm going to get back to my book. Thanks for listening.